Good morning. I'm Sergeant Simon Cheng, that's C-H-E-N-G, with the Harris County Sheriff's Office Vehicular Crimes Division. Our accident investigators are on the scene of a multi-vehicle fatal crash tonight, this morning. This crash was reported to us shortly after 1:30 on this morning, April 10th, 2020. This specific location is the southbound main lanes of the North Freeway, right over the intersection of Rankin Road in North Harris County. This crash involves several vehicles. What our investigators have determined is a red SUV was towing a black trailer southbound in the outside main lane of the freeway. That driver reported to investigators that he had experienced a flat tire or a tire blowout, and he was attempting to exit the freeway. At that time, a gray Mazda 3 sedan was traveling southbound on the main lanes and crashed into the rear end of the trailer. And our investigators have determined that the Mazda ended up in a sideways position on the freeway. Shortly after that, there was a gray Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck that was also traveling southbound on the main lanes of the freeway. That driver reported to our investigators he saw the stopped Mazda in the freeway and attempted to avoid crashing into the Mazda. He took evasive action that caused his pickup truck to spin on the freeway, and he hit the wall and came to rest in the middle lanes of the freeway. Somewhere during that crash sequence, one of the passengers of the red SUV, and we believe the driver of the Mazda, exited their vehicles as they were disabled in the main lanes of the freeway. A 18-wheeler combination tractor and semi-trailer was traveling southbound on the main lanes. It bears the logo of Amazon.com. And that driver stated to our investigators that he saw all the vehicles stopped and immediately tried to swerve into the outside shoulder to avoid crashing into the vehicles and all the debris in the roadway. Unfortunately, he struck all of the units in the roadway, all of the vehicles, and he also unfortunately struck the two adults that had exited out of their vehicles. And we believe that both of the decedents are adult females. They are currently still on scene under the 18-wheeler, and we have our investigators following up at the hospital also, where two children, party to the Lincoln Navigator, the red SUV, were taken. I'm told they were 3 years old and 1-year-old children, and they were properly restrained, and they have minor injuries. And the living adult males that were driving the other vehicles, they sustained no injuries and are cooperating with the investigation. So right now we'll have the southbound main lanes of 45 closed for a few hours as our investigators conduct a full investigation into this unfortunate crash.
So just to confirm, the two deceased are from which, the two deceased females are from which vehicles, and the drivers are from?
Yeah, so we believe that the first deceased female was the front seat passenger of the red SUV, the red Lincoln Navigator. The surviving driver of that vehicle identified her to us, our investigators. We don't have the driver of the Mazda accounted for, and based on placing all the occupants of the vehicles where they are on scene or at the hospital, we believe that that is the driver of the Mazda car on scene. So we won't know for sure until our medical examiners show up, conduct their investigation, and try to find a possible identification on this adult to try to link that person to this Mazda. But based on the evidence, we believe that person was the driver of the Mazda.
Who jumped off the overpass?
Yes, there was another vehicle involved, a white Chevrolet SUV, that our investigators believe that he had seen the initial crashes and had stopped in the outside shoulder to see if he could render aid to anyone. Fortunately, when the 18-wheeler came through southbound and crashed into all the units, the front end of the tractor also crashed into the rear end of that Chevy Suburban. That driver reported to us that he wanted to leave the main lanes to keep himself safe, and he reported that he jumped over the outside wall, which isn't a very high drop onto the feeder road. But he escaped the main lanes and did report this crash to investigators for help.
Do we expect him to survive?
Yes, he sustained no injuries. He gave us a statement. He's going to survive, yes. At that side of the area south of the scene, it may be 8 to 10 feet drop onto the feeder road. So not as tall as we are now on the overpass over Rankin.
The woman that passed away in the red SUV, was that the children's mother? Do you have any idea?
We believe so, yes. All right.
You told her boy or girl, or
I don't know that right now, no.
So this just appears to be an unfortunate accident.
Correct, yes.
Do we believe that weather had anything to do with this?
At the time of the crash, there were light rains. We would consider drizzle on the road, and the road surface I would characterize was slick. So maybe that's what contributed to the Chevrolet Silverado spinning on the freeway. But it wasn't a heavy rain. But we will take into account how slippery the road surface was in relation to how much rain had fallen this morning.
And at this time, we don't believe any charges against any of the drivers?
Correct. We don't have any indication that any of these drivers were impaired. Until we identify the person that was driving the Mazda, we don't have any specific evidence that anybody fled the scene and didn't render aid. So once we figure out more identification from further investigation of these decedents, there possibly will paint a better picture of who to complete the crash report and who we might end up charging. But right now, it doesn't look like there's going to be any charges involved in this crash.
thanks.